Oh, hi guys. I am Kurt Hardy, and my literary device is the paradox. So, what is a paradox? A paradox is a trope. So, it's a phrase that is basically meant to confuse you. It's a phrase that holds two ideas that are at first contradictory, yet when put together express a philosophical statement. So you got those two stick figures down below, and basically saying, I am a paradox. No, you're not, exactly. Oh. And it kind of takes a while to figure out what they mean, but since a paradox is a contradictory statement, and the first guy says, I am a paradox, and the second guy says, no, you're not, that's kind of the contradiction. And although it really isn't philosophical in any way, but it kind of gets the contradictory point across. So a conventional example of paradox is in 1984 with Big Brother and his regime, and then the slogans that they go by. So the three slogans are: war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. All of these are paradoxes because they are completely contradictory to each other. War is the opposite of peace, freedom is the opposite of slavery, and ignorance is strength. They're kind of contradictory in their, I guess, tone. And just none of the phrases make any sense at first, but each represent a philosophical truth. So, for example, ignorance is strength. Fear makes you weak, but being ignorant to something that would give you fear is a kind of an indirect way of strengthening you. It's a morale boost without the initial degrade in morale. A contemporary example would be the great Justin Bieber's Never Say Never. It's a paradox because in the phrase itself you say never twice, but say never. And in the song he says never like 900 times, but that's okay because the deeper meaning is that don't give up, never say that you can never do something. So for a little interactive thing, Mojo, I wrote a small short story. It's pretty bad, but it'll be your guys' job to find the paradox. It's really obvious, but yeah. So once upon a time, there was a scribe. He was a most trusted scribe, and was one day told of a secret mission that he would have to complete for this king. He was tasked with saving the princess, the fair princess of the kingdom. The king, as he was told, was too much of a coward to go himself. Why not send a noble knight? Asked the scribe. They have all fallen against the might of the Black Knight, he was told. The Black Knight, he exclaimed. Who's that? He is the one keeping our fair princess hostage, and the man you must engage with in daring skirmish. So the brave scribe, dressed up as the king, and journeyed to the dark forest where the Black Knight is said to be standing guard. A mile or so into the forest he stopped. The Black Knight stood a mere 5 paces in front of him. Good Sir Knight, the scribe called out, I have come for the fair princess of the kingdom. The Black Knight stood in silence. Good Sir Knight, the scribe called again, if you do not hand over the fair princess, I will have no choice but to engage you in daring skirmish. Free the princess immediately, to which the Black Knight responded, No. And so they did daring skirmish. The Black Knight assaulted the scribe with the steel of his sword. The scribe, however, was a scribe. He had a way with words, and countered with such cutting insults, the Black Knight's arms fell off of his torso. The Black Knight, now disarmed, tried to kick the scribe with the points of his shoes, but the scribe's sharp wit was too much for the Black Knight, and his thighs were separated from the rest of his body. The stumpy torso wailed in frustration. The scribe chuckled triumphantly and finished the Black Knight off with a strike of his big pen. Okay, because it's big, but it's big pen. Ha ha, he said, the pen is mightier than the sword. So what was the paradox? It's really obvious, but you can pause it if you want. So the answer is the last phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword. And I'm sure you guys have all heard of this phrase, but it's contradictory. It's a paradox because it's contradictory in the sense that the pen, how is the pen mightier than the sword? How are you gonna fight someone with a pen, unless you're Jason Bourne? But none of us are Jason Bourne. So the answer is that this paradox refers to the power of influence through media and how much greater of an effect it can have on a population than a sword, or even a war. So the pen itself isn't gonna change anything, but the power of the written word and what a pen can do can influence and change the world more than a sword could ever do. So, when would you actually use a paradox, and what is the effect of it on the writing? A paradox makes writing more complex, more philosophical, and a little more confusing. So it forces you to think about what the reader or what the writer is trying to say. For example, George Orwell in 1984, he wanted his goal. The reason he was writing the book was to make the author, the reader, think about surveillance, what the government, how the government is surveilling you, how much they're surveilling you, if it's really necessary, what's going to happen in the future if it keeps on going. And they also hold philosophical truths. So if the point of your book is to get across a philosophical truth, then a paradox is a very good way to do it. A place where you wouldn't see paradox typically is in children's books, because children's books don't have that level of thinking. They make you think about morals and right from wrong, and don't punch your neighbor in the face and things like that. But they're not going to make you think about the conundrums of society and how oppressive your government is. So, in summation, a paradox is a trope, a literary trope that is meant to make the author or the reader think about the writer, the writing, and what the author is really trying to say. It does this with a contradictory statement that, when looked in further, holds a deeper philosophical truth.